Chris, before we get into your most recent activities, which got you arrested, which I can't wait to get the full download from you about everything that happened, I'm going to start by asking you a question I ask every guest that appears on Spolitics, and that is name a moment or an athlete that made you love sports.
Ooh, dang, that's a tough one because like I always played sports because I wanted to be that moment, right? like so and I wasn't really a huge sports fan growing up because I loved playing video games. So whenever I have TV time, it's like, okay, well, I got to turn on the TV. But I mean, in terms of like actually once I started learning about sports, it's got to be either Muhammad Ali, protesting the Vietnam War, or Jackie Robinson, probably breaking the color barrier in baseball. And then actually going to UCLA, learning about Kenny Washington, doing the same in the NFL. So yeah, kind of, just learning that sports could be more than just what you actually do on the field.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that because you obviously have adopted that spirit of using your platform as an athlete for activism. But I'm just curious to know, what was your first gaming system?
First gaming system was actually the Nintendo, the original NES.
The original NES.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I split my toe open at a birthday party at SeaWorld. This is back when they had, those nasty rubber mats that kind of like had the really sharp edges. And so I couldn't be at school for, I think it was like a week or so. I was driving my parents crazy. They're like, oh, there's this Nintendo thing, let's get them that. And yeah, it was the original double cartridge with Duck Hunt and Mario Brothers. And then I was hooked.
Yeah, those were the days. Listen, I love Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, Contra, like
Oh
all.
yeah, the Konami code.
Yeah, yep, was that up, down, left, right, whatever it is. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I still sort of remember it. I think my last gaming system was a PS2, which
Ooh,
makes me
okay.
completely ancient. I actually camped out for it, me and an ex boyfriend of mine, which is crazy. And I left those days of playing, Madden long, like kind of behind, like decades ago. Now the video
Right.
games are so they're so advanced. I look at them
Mhm.
now, and I'm like, I wouldn't even begin to know how to play. I lost all my mojo.
Yeah. Also, the cool thing is actually it's never too late to come back. That's the that's the first part. And then actually on Steam, there's a lot of really good like indie developers. They make games anywhere from like $5 to $15 that really kind of evoke the spirit of that like 90s to 2000 like SNES, early PlayStation sort of feel. So yeah, there's lots of options out there.
And because I'm 1,000 years old, my first gaming system was an Atari.
Okay. Yeah. One of my
So
friends had one. Play Asteroids.
asteroids, right? Asteroids, Miss Pac-Man, Galaga. That's speaking to my generation. But okay, moving ahead though, just you mentioned briefly like those examples that made you love sports, and you mentioned Kenny Washington, Muhammad Ali. Now, these are all athletes who use their platforms to speak about social and political issues. This is something you have done consistently throughout your career. But when was the time for you? It doesn't have to be one moment, but when did you sort of realize this was how you wanted to use your platform?
Well, so for me, it's actually the moment where I first started speaking out, which would be for LGBTQ rights back when I was playing for the Vikings. Because, up until that point, like I had had a concept of social justice, right? And that like I wanted the world to be a fair place. I didn't want people to, suffer under oppression. But I hadn't really seen myself as like having a role to play in that. Like I couldn't, envision myself as a person who was out there speaking. And then I was approached by a group, Minnesotans for Marriage Equality, who asked me, hey, would you be interested in defeating this amendment that was going to ban same-sex marriage in the state of Minnesota? And it was at that point I was just like, oh shoot, like I actually do have the platform. Like I am in a position to do something, so I need to do it. Because if I ever want someone to speak out for me, well then I got to be willing to do it when it's my turn.
Yeah, the NFL, I've often told people, is a league of conformity. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the model it's built on, and I don't mean that negatively, but there's just a very it's a reason why people always make parallels to the military because of the
Mm-hmm.
way the NFL operates and certainly the way they want their players to operate within the structure of the NFL. So, as you were deciding that you were going to join this fight, how did you broach this subject of wanting to be a voice for marriage equality with the Vikings?
Yeah, so I first I approached the team's legal department. I believe it was Kevin Warren at the time was the head of legal for the Vikings, and talked with him and was like, hey, like I want to do this. How do I do this, without the team thinking that like I'm doing something bad? Because obviously I knew it was going to be a risky stance to take, and that one of the potential consequences would be that people would get upset and I might potentially lose my job. But at the same time, I was like, I feel this is worth speaking out. And so he told me, he's like, yeah, as long as you make it clear that you're a private citizen speaking on your own time, you're not representing the Minnesota Vikings, then yeah, it's fine. And I stuck to that. I was like everything I did was on my own time. Like it was, I wasn't doing it at the facility. I didn't do it during games. It was just like, hey, Chris Kluwe, American citizen, is concerned about this. Like, you should be concerned about this too. Now, obviously, it didn't work out that way. I mean, I ended up getting blacklisted from the league anyways. But yeah, it was one of those things where I definitely knew there could be consequences, and I was trying to mitigate those as much as possible. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, the NFL is run by a bunch of rich old white men for the most part, and the vast majority of them donate to Donald Trump. They voted for Donald Trump, and they're the ones who sign the checks. And I understand why other players don't speak out, because you do run a very real risk of losing your job, and it is not an easy job to get, and you can't get that job anywhere else.
Or what was sort of the reaction with your teammates? Because let's be honest that when we think about social causes that we see athletes do get involved in, typically it's not marriage equality is not one
Right.
of them. You see racial issues, certainly other political issues, but marriage equality, especially given what is the brand of
Mhm.
football, that is a rather unique one. So how did your teammates sort of react to you being involved in this cause?
Yeah, so it's super interesting because at the time the kind of the social perception on same-sex marriage it was around like 60% for, about 40% against. And I really saw that kind of mirrored in kind of my interactions with my teammates, and that about 60% of the guys who came up to me were just like, hey, we think what you're doing is great, that's awesome. And then about 40% were just like, hey, we may not necessarily agree with you, but at the same time, everyone has the right to speak their mind, and like, yeah, that's fine. And I never had any issues with anyone in the locker room. Like I never had any issues with any of the other players, because again, it wasn't like I was in there preaching at people. It was like, if someone wanted to have a conversation, I was more than willing to have that conversation. But at the end of the day, we're there to play football, right? Like that's like the NFL is a very hard thing to do at a professional level. And as like, my focus is on making sure I can punt a football as best as I can, right? Because otherwise they're going to fire me.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, what I thought was interesting about it was that it really mirrored kind of the general societal, view of like, hey, this is what America is like. And I think that's something people don't really understand about the NFL and kind of sports in general, is that even though you see us as athletes, right? Like you see us as people on the television screen doing this one specific thing, at the end of the day, we're human beings, and we come from a very broad array of, socioeconomic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, personal upbringings, and that's reflected in people's views inside the locker room. It's not just a homogenous entity.
I've heard players, both current and former players, talk about what that mix is like in the locker room. And I think for a lot of us, we that aren't privy to some of what you have seen in the locker room, I guess some of us are just curious as to like how those conversations go. Because as you mentioned, you have a mixture of people, different racial backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, social economic, like it runs across the
Mhm.
board. So when there are I've heard, in fact, one former player even told me that that was actually the best place to have this kind of discourse,
Mhm.
as opposed to like out here in the civilian world
Right.
where things tend to be much different when you try to have those conversations. So maybe provide some insight as to what it's like when it comes to challenging topics, be it racism or you mentioned same-sex marriage. Like, what are those kinds of topics like when discussing them in the midst of a locker room?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting because everyone in there comes from a sort of shared goal, right? Where we all are out there doing the conditioning. Like we're all out there running half gassers. We're all in the weight room doing the really crappy parts that don't get shown on television, but that you have to do to be a professional athlete. And everyone knows you've committed yourself to this, right? Like you put in the time, you put in the hours. So there is that sort of shared bond between everyone that you understand this isn't just someone talking out of their ass about about something, like they've shown they can commit to something. They've shown they understand what it takes to be great. And so like we can have those conversations and disagree with each other, because we know like afterwards we're going to go out on the field and we're going to do our jobs to the best of our ability. And you know that the person you're talking with, like they want to win, right? Like they're going to give you their best effort. And so, yeah, I think that's part of why we're able to have those conversations, because again, like you've suffered through the same stuff. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, this is different, than what we do out on the field, but there's a genuineness to the conversation to where, you share something with that other person.
Well, tell me if this is a crazy analogy or not. In a way, I kind of liken it to marriage, because in marriage you have to come into every disagreement, the spirit of resolution has to be there,
Right.
because a lot of times, you know what I mean, it's like a lot of times when you're just in a relationship that is not leading to marriage, or you're not married, it's like you can come in there with the intention and the mindset of I need to win this argument,
Right.
but at what cost, right? At marriage, you actually have to think about what the cost. At the end of the day, I got to go to sleep with this person, right?
Yeah.
and so maybe to that degree it works that way in the locker room. Is like, regardless of the different political differences or whatever, at the end of the day, at some point y'all gonna be on the field together, and everybody's trying to get paid and are trying to win. So is that something, does that make sense as an
yeah, no, that makes total sense. Like, I mean, I've been happily married to my wife for I think like 20 some odd years now, and like we've had some real like screaming arguments before in the past, right? But like you said, at the end of the day, it's we love each other, we want to spend our lives together, so we need to figure out how to resolve this. And so in the locker room, it's like, yeah, you may get into an argument with a guy. Like I've seen dudes get in fistfights, right? Like Brian, I think it was God, I forget who it was. One of our running backs threw a chair at someone. Like, but then the next day it's like, okay, well, we got to go out and beat the Packers. Like, so we're all on the same page. Like we may not even necessarily like each other today, but tomorrow we have to come together as a team and we have to go out there to succeed. And so yeah, I think you're really spot on that. In that, yeah, it is a lot like a relationship in that you do have an overriding goal you're trying to achieve.
So, for you as somebody who's a heterosexual man speaking out on behalf of same-sex marriage, how do you think your voice, maybe added to that conversation, because you were, somebody who technically this doesn't impact? So how do you think your voice was able to sort of kind of add to the issue overall?
Right. So the unfortunate reality of America that, has been the case for pretty much since the founding of our country is that straight white men get listened to more than anyone else. Like that really is just the reality of America. And so there are a lot of people out there who have been doing the work, people from the LGBTQ plus community, people, from non-white communities, people who have been putting in the hours and putting in the time. And unfortunately, people who look like me don't tend to listen to them, right? Like, because they're like, oh, well, that doesn't affect me, like you just said, or, I will never see myself in that situation. But when someone who does look like them, when someone who they can relate to and be like, oh, that's a white guy playing football, like I can picture myself in that position. When they say the exact same thing, now all of a sudden it becomes important. and I wish that wasn't the case. Like I wish people would listen when other people are like, hey, what you're doing is wrong, you should stop doing it. But since that is the reality we live in, it is incumbent upon those of us with the privilege and with the power that can say those kind of things and be listened to, that we actually do say those things, that we do engage those people and make them understand that, yeah, just because this isn't affecting you personally now, that doesn't mean it may not affect you in the future. Because, hey, what if your kid grows up to be a member of the LGBTQ plus community? Like we saw that a lot in Republican positions during the, same-sex marriage debate, is that they would be firmly against it up until the point where it personally impacted them or their family. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, maybe gay people should be allowed to get married. Like maybe this is a good idea.
Now, of course, once you decided to step out there and support, marriage equality, the reaction then from the Vikings seemed to be mixed. I think that's probably the best way to put it. So once it became apparent that the Vikings weren't completely comfortable with you taking this position, how did it impact how you chose to use your voice for this issue?
Yeah, so I think a key point to point out there is that I'm not sure that it was necessarily the issue so much as it was the issue plus the attention, right? Because in the NFL is real big on like, don't bring attention to us unless it's one of our preferred things that we want you to bring attention to, right? Certain politics are okay to talk about in the NFL, but
Right.
something like that. It was like, because like I initially started working with Minnesotans for Marriage Equality back in the summer of 2012, so this was before the season even started, and like I'd done some appearances, I'd done some radio stuff, and no one really like cared about it because it wasn't a big deal yet. And then I wrote the Deadspin piece that went super viral, and now all of a sudden it's like, okay, now there's national attention on this thing, now it's becoming an issue. And so yeah, I think it's unfortunate that the way the team approached it was kind of like, we don't want you to bring this kind of attention to the team, whereas I was like, well, no, we need to talk about this. And yeah, people are going to ask me about it in the locker room, but when I'm in the locker room, like, I'm telling them I'm here for football. Like if people want to interview me away from the locker room, I'm going to talk with them about same-sex marriage because I think it's something worth talking about. And as an American citizen, I have the right to do so. Like, it doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter if you're an NFL player. It doesn't matter, if you're a plumber, if you're a bus driver, a teacher. You have the First Amendment protected right to speak your mind in a public setting to your government, even if it's an unpopular viewpoint. And I feel, unfortunately, a lot of people are moving away from that.
But Chris, you said you don't think it was the issue. So I mean,
sorry, I meant it wasn't like, I think it wouldn't have been as much of an issue as if it didn't come with as much attention as it came with. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense because I mean, part of it is like, I do think it's a little bit, outside looking in, a little bit about the issue. Like, for example, if, let's say you were still playing for the Vikings when George Floyd happens, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know that the league is going to have that same reaction that they had versus how they responded. Or I shouldn't say the league, but let me be very specific. The Vikings would have responded the way that they did if you would have spoken out against what happened to George Floyd.
So yeah, I agree with you in that there definitely were regressive elements that did not like the issue itself, and it's actually funny because my wife and I were talking back when Colin Kaepernick was protesting, right, where she was like, if they hadn't blacklisted you before, you definitely would have been blacklisted there because you absolutely would have been on a knee. I'm like, yep. so yeah, I think that is the case, that there are certain political issues that the league does not want to talk about, again, because it's run by rich white men who tend to hold fairly conservative viewpoints. So yes, I do think there is a certain faction within the NFL that just doesn't want it to be any sort of progressivism like associated with the league itself.
So, and as you mentioned, you wrote about this in Deadspin, where you laid out exactly what led to you being blacklisted from the league, and talked about like all these things that happened behind the scenes once you decided that you were going to speak out on this issue. One of the things that somewhat surprised me is Leslie Frazier, who was the coach of the Vikings at the time when you decided to do this. For those who don't know, he's a black head coach, very respected. One of the league's, sort of best coaches, who is known for, being a defensive minded coach. He's got an extensive resume in the league. He was one of the ones who said early on that he really didn't want you doing this, and he didn't want you to step out and make, and he wasn't saying anything against the issue based off what I read from what you said. It was mostly that he was concerned that you were going to get the type of attention that wasn't going to be good for the team and good for the league. How surprising was it for you that Leslie Frazier took that position? Because here we have a black head coach who's probably been through his own level of struggles in terms of trying to break barriers in this league. We know how the NFL has treated a lot of black coaches. Were you surprised that that was his position?
I was a little surprised, but I also I understood it, right? And that he is a head coach. He is, a black man as a head coach, which, as you said, is very hard to do. I mean, it's especially back then. And the sense I always got from him wasn't that it was about the issue. It was about the fact that he just did not want any sort of controversy to come to the team because he felt like it would blow back on him. I mean, that's a fair stance to take because like, that can lead to you getting fired as a head coach. But at the same time, there's a reason why I titled my second piece, I was fired by two cowards and a bigot. Because like, I think it is a cowardly stance to take. And I'm sorry, I know you've gone through a lot of shit. Like, I know it's not fair to say that, but at the end of the day, like, you got to be able to stand up for something, right? Like, even, especially when it's uncomfortable or dangerous, because that's when you know it really matters.
So to your point about two cowards and the bigot, let's talk about the bigot. The bigot, I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Is it Mike Prefer?
Yeah, Mike Prefer.
Mike Prefer. Like, who cares if I pronounce his name right, given all the things you laid out in this piece? So, according to you, as you wrote, is that Mike Prefer, who was your position coach, correct? With the Vikings. He was somebody who made it very known that he was against gay marriage, seemed to be quite homophobic based off what you described, and he was sort of leaning into his Christian beliefs as being the shield for why he felt this way. So knowing that this coach that you have, that is, your position coach, who is responsible for so much in terms of like what you're playing, how much you're playing, and the perception of your performance is like, this person is directly responsible for this. At what point did you start to get the overt indications that he was going to be a major roadblock for you in this scenario?
After the first Deadspin piece went viral, because up to that point, like, the team obviously knew what I was doing, because I'd been doing the appearances, and like guys would give me shit about it, right? Because that happens in a locker room, and like, but it's really easy to tell when someone's just trying to get a rise out of you, right? Because they're just talking shit, versus this person actually believes what they're saying, right? Like, it's there's a difference in inflection, there's a difference in tone, there's a difference in how they actually approach what they're saying. And like, up until that first letter went viral, I got the sense that no one was really like saying things to me with the intention of like, we don't like gay people, we don't think this should be a case. It's more just like, oh, we're going to give the punter some shit because, he's speaking out on this. After that letter went viral, that dynamic changed like completely between me and Prefer, in that like, it started like, just the way he was talking about stuff, the things that he would bring up, I'm just like, oh crap, this is a guy who's responsible for my job and he really does not like what I'm doing. And so it's one of those uncomfortable moments, because my initial instinct, right, is to kind of lash back, right, to be like, no, like, fuck you, like, this is important and you should care about this. But at the same time, it's like, if I can just get through this season, hopefully it'll die down, don't make waves, everything will be okay. And obviously I tried to follow the second path, it didn't work. And that was that's when I reverted to my initial instinct, where it's like, all right, then, if this is who you are, now we need to talk about it. Because again, based on everything I saw, based on how my performances were recorded, I firmly believe I was fired from the Vikings for my political views, not for my punting ability. And it's unfortunate, because like, I set most of the Vikings punting records while I was there. And like, not to toot my own horn, but I feel like I was pretty good at my job. and it turned out the way it did. Now, that being said, for what it's worth, I also think people need to be given a chance to grow from their mistakes, right? Like, it's one thing to be, okay, I made a mistake, I've been a bad person, but if you can learn from that, if you can grow from that, if you can change your behavior, everyone deserves that chance, because otherwise, how are we going to get better, right? So I have an unconfirmed report from a random person on Reddit who said that they personally know the Prefer family, and that according to them, that Mike has changed his ways, that it actually really did, get to him and he understands. So I don't know if that's true or not. I hope it's true, because I would hope that someone would choose to be a better person. But yeah, I think it sucks what happened, but we also need to keep room in our hearts for forgiveness, and for giving people a second chance, to become a better person. But you don't get a third chance.
Well, have you and Mike Prefer had any conversations since that experience?
No, we have not.
Okay. And just so people are aware, that Mike Prefer is now on Bill Belichick's staff at the University of North Carolina, I believe also as a special teams coach. So, once you were, obviously, as you wrote about, like, Prefer was making some homophobic statements that made you uncomfortable, and not just you, because as you wrote, there were other players who really were not comfortable with some of the things that he was saying. when you're in that environment, especially we're talking about an NFL environment, there's really, it doesn't seem like there's really any recourse if that's the case. There's no, it's not like you can go to HR. Like you can't, like there's like really, really nothing that you can do. As you're going through this process though, did it begin to impact how you looked at the Vikings as an organization?
Yeah, it kind of bummed me out, especially with how things turned out, because the owner himself, Ziggy Wilf, like he had come up to me after that first piece had gone viral, and he was like, "Hey, what I think what you're doing is great, right? Like I think you're doing the right thing." And for those who don't know, Ziggy Wilf and his family, they're Jewish, right? And they're a very family oriented company, and like I'll never forget my rookie year when they first took over. That was the whole Love Boat incident, and
Oh
like
yeah.
he lost his shit like in a team meeting because he's like, "We are a family business, like you reflect upon us and you were pissing on people's lawns." And here I am, my first year in the NFL, like, is this normal? But yeah, no, so like, I'm getting this message from Ziggy, who theoretically controls the team, right? Like he's the guy who's in charge, and then at the same time the team lets me go, and then after I sue them and we settled, and they, they were required to put on an LGBTQ summit, like, get people to aware of this. Like they kind of dragged their feet on it. Like they didn't really make it happen until like, I think close to the end of the 5-year deadline that they had to actually do this thing. So I think there are people within not just the Vikings organization, but within all NFL organizations that want to do the right thing. Unfortunately, I don't think enough of them are in positions of power to where they can do the right thing.
Yeah, I think people, when they saw it's so many similarities that what you have described as your experience that are very similar to Colin Kaepernick's.
Mhm.
He also sued the league, and they also settled his case. And for people out there who may not know this, is like it is rare to get a W against the NFL
Mhm.
at all, because there's a reason why they became as powerful as they become. When you reflect back, and especially thinking about what happened to your employment opportunities after this, how much do you think the lawsuit contributed to being, you not ever getting another shot in the NFL? Like, do you think had you not sued, that maybe you might have had an opportunity to play again, or did you think that was just going to be the consequence regardless?
Oh, so the timeline on that, I didn't actually sue until after I knew I wasn't going to play in the league again. So
Okay.
so basically what happened is the next year I had the Raiders pick me up. So I was with the Raiders during the preseason, and that was just a legit competition. I got beat out by Marquette King. Like he was the better punter than me. He was the rookie with the big leg. I was the older vet. And like I can't complain about that, because when I came in the league, I was the rookie with the big leg. And I beat out the older guy. Like that's kind of the nature of the business. So I was like, no, that was fair. The Raiders treated me fine. I have no complaints there. Then I had a couple tryouts. One was a Call of the Wild tryout with the Bears, where everyone there knew that we weren't going to get the job. It was one of those where the punter has a bad game the week before, and they're like, "We're going to bring in 6 guys," and we're all just like, "None of us are getting hired," like, especially because I want to say it was like 30-mile-an-hour winds coming through, and so they have us out here punting, and like it's going 15 yards against the wind and like 80 yards with it. I'm like, you cannot judge anyone's capabilities on today. But the one that really made me aware that like I'm not going to play in the league ever again was I had to try out with the Cincinnati Bengals. That was after Ken Huber had his jaw broken on Sunday Night Football. I think it was a blindside hit on a punt return. And it's funny because I was actually in Minnesota for that game, because I was being honored for the Metrodome All 25 Years team as the best punter for the Vikings. So I was at a restaurant with some friends and watching, they had the game on the TVs, and I saw the hit happen. I'm like, oh shit, like the Bengals are probably going to call me tomorrow morning and ask me to come out, to try out. And sure enough, yeah, they called me up the next morning. I'm like, yes, I can make it. I just need some cleats. It's like I wasn't really planning on this to happen. So I went and did that tryout and felt like that I had won it, because they weren't looking for a replacement for Huber. They were just looking for a veteran guy to finish out the season. They had playoff aspirations. I think they were either like in the lead for their division, or like, they were going to be a wild card. They needed someone who could directional punt, which I showed, obviously I could do that because I'd been doing it for a while with the Vikings. And then, yeah, they didn't go with me. So I was like, okay, maybe they just saw something in someone else. The guy they went with, he had shanked a couple punts in the tryouts. They cut him after 2 weeks because he shanked a couple punts during the games. And then they picked up Zoltan Mesko. And, Zoltan's a great dude. He's also a really good punter. Problem is Zoltan Mesko wasn't at the tryout. So I'm like, okay, so if you're going with the guy who wasn't at the tryout and you've already seen what I can do, and this is literally the best case scenario for me, I'm not an NFL punter anymore. Because like if I can't get this job, then there is no chance for me to punt in the NFL. And that was where I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, then I want people to know here is what happened. And that's when I wrote the second Deadspin piece, and then that's when I filed suit against the team, and then we ended up settling.
Uh, but that has got to be sort of heavy to deal with. Is your NFL exit, and I get it. Players can never control how you leave the game, like you just can't. But yours wasn't due to injury. It wasn't due to the fact that you just weren't good anymore. It was literally because you chose it. You chose to take a stance against something. How did that emotionally register for you?
It sucked. My wife was pretty pissed about it. I think she probably is still pissed about it. It's and it sucks because looking at the traditional career of punters and kickers is that usually once you make it past those first 2 or 3 years, you're gonna play for like anywhere from 12 to 15, right? Like that's the typical career punter path. And I was looking forwards to signing another contract, to playing for another like 4 to 8 years in the league, because that's what I felt I had left in me. Like I felt like I could still perform at that level. So yeah, it was just it sucked, but at the same time, when I look at everything that happened in terms of Minnesota actually banning that marriage amendment, in terms of same-sex marriage actually becoming legal at the federal level, 6 months later, it's like, well, it was worth it, right? Like it was, I set out to accomplish something, to help other people accomplish something, and we did it. So, yeah, I would have liked to play more football, but I would much rather live in a society that allows people to be who they are, even if it comes at the cost of some of my football career days.
At least from what I read, and you can clarify whether or not it's true, is that you didn't receive any money for that settlement. Is
No.
that correct?
Yeah, I
You
made
did
it
not.
very clear up front that the whole reason why I was suing the team was it wasn't to try to get any wages for me. It was to show that if you do this, there will be a cost. And like that, it's not right to do this. You should not hold this position. And because the other thing is, again, like even though I only played 8 years in the NFL, like I still made enough money to where I live pretty modestly. I don't need a lot of things. Like I don't have to buy the latest expensive car. Pretty much the only thing I need is like a somewhat up to date gaming laptop. That's my major expense. But yeah, so I knew I would be okay, like even if I never played again. And so it's like, I don't want your money. I want you to understand what you did was wrong. And I feel like that helps get the message across that like I'm not trying to make this about me. I'm trying to make this about the issue at hand, which is you can't discriminate against people. Like that's not what America should be about.
Now, you were years before Michael Sam got drafted and played in the NFL. Michael Sam being an out player who was, I think he was drafted by, was it the
I think it's the
Rams?
Rams, yeah, in
I
like the
think it was the
seventh round, I
Rams.
want to say.
Yeah, in like the seventh round. Uh, Given your experience in the locker room, you know these players. Do you think the NFL, because there was some definitely some awkward moments in terms of the coverage of Michael Sam and
Mm-hmm.
everything else, but do you think the NFL is, I hate to use this word, but I'm going to use it for being not as eloquent as I want to be in this moment. Is the NFL ready to have, sort of out players? I mean, I know there are a couple in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I'm forgetting his name, who plays for the Raiders,
Yeah, he's a defensive lineman, right?
defensive lineman, right?
Yeah.
But do you think that this is a league that has now culturally come to the point where this is fine if we have gay players who are playing in the NFL?
I think it's approaching that point. I don't think it's quite at that point yet, because a lot of the same ownership that was there when Michael Sam was coming into the league is still the same ownership now. And unfortunately, with the way our current political climate is unfolding, they might see it as a reason for them to go back to the way things were, instead of, oh, we've covered this ground, let's not do that again. And it sucks for Michael Sam that he had to be the first guy, right? Because like it's always hard to be the first guy, and like I'm very thankful that he was the first guy though, because then he does clear the path for other people, right? Like he does make it a little bit easier for the next guy to be like, okay, you know what? I can be who I am. And I'll never forget, I was talking with Isaiah Tuwala. He's another defensive lineman. He played for, I think, the Falcons and the Packers before my time. And he was telling me, like, he was in the Super Bowl, playing in the Super Bowl. And he would tense up and get nervous whenever he made a sack and the crowd was cheering, because he's like, oh, crap, what if they're yelling at me for who I am? I'm like, this is supposed to be one of the greatest moments of your life. And that is so unfair that, like, you can't enjoy that because the league won't let you enjoy it because they say who you are is not allowed. And like, that's what we all need to fight against is, so that people can be who they are and they can enjoy those moments.
Carl Nassib, that's his name.
Yes, Carl Nassib,
defensive end for the Raiders. That's who I was thinking of, who is an out player. So, Chris, because you obviously learned your lesson and decided, you know what, resistance isn't for me. I kid, because you definitely haven't learned your lesson, and it's probably a good thing for the folks out there where you live in Huntington Beach. So recently, you took on the Huntington Beach City Council, and you engaged in what is an American right, as you have pointed out, not just the right to freedom of speech, but the right to civil disobedience. And all of this is over a plaque that I believe that they wanted to hang in the library. And the plaque was the MAGA slogan. I mean, they tried to be kind of slick about it, so they used like an acronym sort of. But it was the plaque commemorating 50 years of Huntington Beach's library. And on the plaque, it said, magical, alluring, galvanizing, adventurous. If anybody knows how to spell, that is MAGA, MAGA. Okay. So, and then underneath the words on the plaque, it reads, through hope and change, our nation has built back better to the golden era of making America great again. So a lot of people would see this and they say, what's the big deal? Why was this the fight against the city council that you wanted to pick? Why did you decide not today? I choose, nonviolence.
Right. Yeah. So this is actually a fight we've been having here in the city for the past like 2.5, 3 years. And I've been at previous city council meetings speaking out on this. Like this wasn't just a one-off where like, oh, Chris lost his mind and then he got arrested. Like this has been an ongoing process. And it started with a member of our city council, Gracie Vandermark. She wanted to ban a bunch of books from the children's section of the library because she said they were inappropriate in pornography. Vast majority of the books were LGBTQ plus issue books. And so, immediately that pinged my radar is like, oh, hey, yeah, like I should probably talk about this. But also like, I'm a huge reader. Like I grew up reading tons of books. I grew up in libraries. Like I was fortunate enough that my parents had a ton of books in our house. Like we pretty much had our own personal library. Like I have my own personal library now, like hundreds of books. Like I love books. And a library is supposed to be an apolitical space. It's supposed to be a place where anyone can go in and read and find knowledge. And honestly, it's the backbone of the American education system because it allows kids who don't have access to books at home a place where they can go and learn and where they can discover things that they might not otherwise know. And so when this initial book banning was announced, me and a bunch of other people in the city, showed up at the city council meeting and said, this is not okay. Like this, there already is a process for removing inappropriate content. We know it works because Gracie used it. And the library said, oh yeah, that book was filed inappropriately. Let's put it in the right section. This is an early teen book. Like this isn't a kid's book. So we had a process. The librarians knew what they were doing. Like there was no reason to ban these books. So big uproar about that. Then Gracie came back and said, okay, well, we're going to institute a board that judges the suitability of the books in the library. And everyone's like, well, that's just a book banning board. Like you're just talking about banning books another way. So there was a big outcry about that. We circulated a petition, got over 16,000 signatures. That's one of our ballot measures that's coming up in a special election in June, is to get rid of this book banning board. Then the city council tried to privatize the library. They're like, oh, the library's not being run efficiently. We want this group to come in and run it. And then when you look at the privatized group that runs it, they're notorious for just gutting libraries. Like they get rid of all their services, they cut down their selections. And, a library isn't supposed to be a for-profit system. It's a service. Like it helps people. It doesn't need to turn a profit. So yeah, big outcry about that led to another petition. That's the second ballot issue on our special election in June.
Wow. So you've been fighting the power up in Huntington Beach.
yeah. Huntington Beach, we're having to go through some shit right now. so that was the third part. And then the fourth part was this plaque. And, the initial plaque that they proposed, it didn't even have like the slogans on the bottom. It just had the MAGA acrostic as the biggest font on the plaque. And I'm sorry, if you're honoring a library, maybe the library should be the biggest font on the plaque, not your political message. And so I actually went to the library planning commission meeting the week before, where it wasn't just me. There was a bunch of people there. 90% of the people there, including some Trump supporters, were like, we don't like this plaque. It is ugly. It is stupid. We do not want it in this fashion. We want to support our library. We want to celebrate it, but we do not want this on the plaque. Naturally, the Planning Commission ignored all of us, rubber stamped it, sent it straight to the council, which I knew they were going to do because, again, we don't really have a functioning city government in Huntington Beach right now because a city council is supposed to be apolitical. Like that's why you don't run with a D or an R next to your name. Like you're supposed to work for the good of the community and you're supposed to do what's best for the entire city. So anyways, they sent it to the city council. I knew the city council wasn't going to listen because I have yet to see them actually debate any issue brought up in public comment. Like they just don't listen to people. They have their agenda. They want to do what they're going to do. And again, that's not a functional government. So it was at that point where it's like, okay, well, I really want to point out that what MAGA stands for, here's what it stands for. It is explicitly a Nazi movement. It is explicitly un-American. It is like the worst parts of humanity. And by putting that on our library, like that's telling everyone who comes to our city, this is what Huntington Beach stands for. And then I was like, and I want to do something more. I want people to know that we're not being listened to. So the next step is peaceful civil disobedience, because this is what I had been wanting to see from my elected officials because this happened back in February. Like for a month straight, I was like, where are our John Lewises, right? Like where is our good trouble? Where are our senators and Congress people who are blocking Doge from getting into buildings or pushing past Doge to find out like what they're doing with our Social Security information or what's going on at the Treasury? Like that's what our elected officials are supposed to do. And so I've always firmly believed if I'm going to ask someone to do something, I have to be willing to do the same thing. So I was like, well, if you're not going to do it, I guess I have to show you how to do it again. And so that led to me being like, okay, well, guess I'm going to go get arrested. And so, so then that clip went viral. And certainly sparked some attention, and they passed the plaque anyways. They don't care. They
passed the plaque anyway.
Yeah. It's a, and then so the whole thing. So the thing you read on the bottom, that mashup of kind of like it's a Obama slogan, Biden slogan, and then Trump slogan. And the point is, it's not that we don't want fairness in our political slogans on the library plaque. We don't want any political slogans on the library plaque. Like we want the library to be an apolitical public space because that's what it's supposed to be.
So because you went in with this intention, got to know, what did your wife think about this?
So I'd actually told her, I'm like, I'm probably going to get arrested. She's like, yeah, sure. Because, she's like, yeah, you talk a big game. I was like, no, I'm pretty sure.
She didn't think you were going to get arrested?
Right, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But when it happened, she's like, yeah, that sounds about right. So,
she knows who she married.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
At this point.
She's like, yeah, that's my husband.
So what has the reaction been in your community that you chose to take this stance?
Yeah, so people who have talked to me, all for it. Like they're like, yes, we're tired of the city council. Like we're tired of them, essentially not representing the city, right? Because to be fair to Huntington Beach does lean conservative. Like it is a fairly conservative city. However, it's the small C conservative. Like we don't want to pay as many taxes. We don't want people to build houses in our backyards. Like that's basically Huntington Beach conservatism. I don't think our conservative people realized when they voted for the city council, they were hitching their wagon to the Nazi train. Like that's that. And now it's our job to make them aware that, yeah, you teamed up with the Nazis. So like you kind of need to come back over to the American side. Otherwise you're enabling the Nazis. And so, yeah, it's been very supportive. However, there is a regressive element. I did get fired from my job as a freshman football coach at Edison High School because they deliberately took a Blue Sky post out of context and called the school and said that I was making threats. The post in question, we had recorded a video asking people to not review bomb the library because like people were like, oh, I'm gonna go review bomb the library, like make it lower the rating so everyone hates it. I'm just like, don't do that. Like the library is a great place. Like we don't want you to do that. If you're going to review bomb something, go find where the council members work and bomb there instead. And so my post was like, I can't believe I have to say this, but please don't attack the library. Find out where the council members are working and blow those places up instead. Quote posted with the actual video where we explicitly reference review bombing. I got a call from a Huntington Beach police detective that claimed that I was inciting violence and I was making violent threats. I'm just like, no, I'm not. Like I'm talking about review bombing. She did not seem interested in the context of the post. So I'm like, okay, if it'll make you feel better because I want to keep my community safe, I'll take the post down. Right? Like, because again, I don't want violence in my community. I want peaceful civil disobedience so people understand what's happening. And then the school called me in and said, we have to let you go. We're getting too much attention. Notably, they did not say anything about violent threats. So at the time, I'm pretty sure they were just like, oh, we're getting phone calls. We're just going to get rid of this guy, right? Same as the NFL. They don't want the attention, and it's unfortunate because we're seeing that happen in institutions across America right now, in higher education, with law firms, with corporations. People are bending the knee to fascism because they think it will save them, and it won't. If you don't stand up to a bully, he's just going to keep taking everything you have until you have nothing left. So yes, I have faced personal repercussions for it, but again, at the same time, it's like, this is a message we need to be talking about. And this is arguably even more important than when I spoke out for LGBTQ plus rights, because this is the very fabric of our society. Like this is, are we going to be American or not? Like, will we have the ability to have free speech and to protest against things we disagree with?
In this moment, I think a lot of people are evaluating and thinking about what's important. A lot of the things that you just mentioned, we just, recently there was a hands-off protest where you saw thousands of people nationwide who were participating and showing their displeasure about this administration, about the authoritarianism in this country, like all those things that you just mentioned. I think capitulation, we see a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And that has sort of been, as you just said, that's been the kind of the default, that people are just capitulating often in advance, not necessarily even being asked to, they're just doing it. Yeah, I mean, they're absolutely doing it. So for you, given what you've already risked, you've lost a career over this, you've lost now a job over this, what is it that keeps you continuing this fight, knowing now, even though you've experienced all these consequences, a lot of people would have just been like, fuck it. Like, what am I doing this for if y'all not willing to fight? Mm-hmm. So what is it that keeps you engaged in the fight? Because I think a lot of people need to understand what that is as they try to evaluate what's their own level of resistance.
Right. So for me, it's a couple things. The primary one is that, like, I actually am a proud American, right? Like, I want America to live up to the dreams and ideals that were stated in the founding of our country. Now, granted, those were not achieved even at the founding of our country because our founders were slave owners. So like, we still have to deal with that. We haven't dealt with that in a meaningful way. And actually, I'll get to that in just a bit. But the thing is, like, I want to be proud of my country, and what Americans do, we show up for other people. Like, we welcome in the tired and the poor and the huddled masses yearning to be free, right? Like, we have the Declaration of Independence that everyone deserves the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yeah, we haven't achieved it. Like, we haven't had that for everyone, but I think it's a dream worth pursuing. And that's what drives me, because that's the country I want to live in. And if I don't fight for it, eventually they're going to come for me. Like, and if someone's watching this and you think, oh, why should I stick up for other people, right? Like, I can tell you, you can fight for purely selfish reasons. Like, you can fight completely to protect yourself, because if you don't fight now, eventually they will get to you, because you're either going to do something that they don't like, or you're going to turn into a person that you don't like. So it is incumbent upon us to act now, because the longer we wait, the harder it gets and the more damage happens. So yeah, that's the big driver for me from a personal level. And on a secondary level, it's because I can afford to do it, right? Like, I am a well-off heterosexual white man. Like, I am the type of person who should be on the front lines fighting, because I am the type of person who can afford to absorb those blows. And we need more people like me on the front lines. Like, we need more people like me joining in the resistance and saying, no, even though this might be personally harmful to me, even though this might impact my economic status or my job, I can afford to do it. I have enough money. Like, I have enough to keep my family safe and secure. I need to step up for those who can't, because there are a lot of people who do want to be out there but can't be out there because they are members of marginalized groups, because they are at risk of being deported or sent to jail. Like, that's why we need to step up. And to be perfectly frank, Donald Trump is a white person problem. Like, he is a white person problem. We made Donald Trump. we need to clean up our mess. So that means you need to show up to protest. You need to show up to your city council meetings. You need to contact your elected officials. You need to tell them, we are angry as hell about what this country is turning into, and we need to do something about it.
A lot of we were always wrestling with these questions about whether or not athletes are obligated to use their platform, use their position, their status, their wealth, as you just pointed out, in order to speak up for those who don't have the same resources or access. Where do you stand with how athletes can play a part in this larger political picture?
Yeah, so a lot of it is really just using your voice, right? Because one of the biggest problems we're also facing is that people just aren't politically knowledgeable about what's going on. I mean, I think it was like half of the country didn't even vote in our most recent election. It's like Donald Trump doesn't have a mandate. Like, he didn't even win with a majority. He won with a plurality. Like, there's, maybe like 25-30% of the country actually voted, for him to do what he's doing. And it's like, we need those people who don't understand why this is important to become engaged. And even if it's just for this particular moment, we need you to understand that the idea of America is under threat and that it is an existential threat. And if you don't show up, then you are going to lose what makes America America. And, athletes can help with that, because a lot of those people who aren't politically engaged watch sports, right? They'll watch the Super Bowl, they'll tune in to the World Series, they'll watch the Stanley Cup. So athletes have that platform to reach those people who might not otherwise see that information. And as as Spider-Man said very famously, as Uncle Ben said, right, with great power comes great responsibility. And you know what? You have great power. Here's the responsibility part.
A lot of people listening to this might have this question, because it certainly has popped in my mind, considering the issues that you're having there in Huntington Beach with the city council and what they've hitched their wagon to. I'm not familiar with how the city council, is decided, but have you thought about running for the city council there in Huntington Beach?
Yeah, so I've been asked that a lot. I'm still trying to figure out what the most effective use of my voice is going to be. And so from a nuts and bolts standpoint, one of the big problems with Huntington Beach is that, unlike the cities surrounding us, we don't run off a precinct system. So, normally with a precinct system, you have individual areas and then council members are elected from those areas. We have a at-large system, which means whoever the top 3 or top 4 vote getters are, depending on election cycle, those are the people who go in. Huntington Beach also has a problem in that the Calvary Chapel megachurch has a couple really big branches in Huntington Beach. And the Calvary Chapel megachurch has decided that they want to play politics. So we need to, A, start taxing them if they want to play politics. And B, people need to understand that right now the agenda being implemented in Huntington Beach is not a Huntington Beach agenda. It is a MAGA agenda, and it is a specific religious agenda, more specifically a white nationalist Christian religious agenda, which I know a lot of folks don't agree with, because there are a lot of different flavors of Christianity. So again, to make a long story short, I am thinking about it. The problem is I'm going to have to compete with a lot of money, and a lot of money coming in from outside of state, because our most recent city council election, our 4th place, so the first runner-up, Natalie Mosier, she raised, I think it was around like $270,000 to run for a city council seat, which is kind of ridiculous for a beach town. Like, you should be spending maybe like 30 or 40 grand. Like, that should be your election, war chest. But that's what we have to compete against. And that wasn't enough, because, we have all this money flowing into the city because MAGA and this specific church group, they want to use this as their, sort of test bed, their breeding ground to then start expanding to other cities in the state. And we're already seeing that happen. One of the very first things Huntington Beach was a flag ban on the pride flag. Said, you can't fly the pride flag anymore at city facilities. That was kind of their starting point. Recently, I think it was about a week and a half ago, I had to go to Aliso Viejo because they were considering a similar pride flag ban. And I was like, hey, like this is how it started in Huntington Beach. And you do not want to end up like Huntington Beach, because it's bad for your city. It's bad for the business of your city. It's going to draw white nationalists and white supremacists to your city, and people will just stop spending money there. So like from a business perspective, you do not want to go down our path, because we are losing business over this. Like I've heard from multiple people, they're like, we just won't go to Huntington Beach anymore because there's a racist problem here. And Huntington Beach has always had that history. I grew up in Seal Beach, which is like almost right next door, and it's there's a long and sordid past in the in the Huntington Beach city history, but like it was moving in the right direction. Now it's moving back in the wrong direction, and so we need folks to understand that if you move in that direction, there is a cost to that. There's a financial cost to that, and it's not good for your city.
What's your relationship like with football now? You are obviously coaching, but knowing, how the league, and some would characterize it as that they turned their back on you. How does that, how do you view football now?
So the thing for me is that I was never really a big sports fan, because whenever I had TV time, I wanted to play video games. Like that was never really wanted to watch sports. And then when I was interested in sports, I'm like, I'm just gonna go play sports, right? Like I'm gonna go outside and do something. That being said, like I have a complicated relationship with the NFL, and that like I think you can learn a lot of really good things from football, right? Like it teaches teamwork, it teaches the value of struggle, right? Of overcoming adversity, and of finding your limits and then pushing past what you thought your limits were to find your actual limits. So like, I do think there is a value to football. Unfortunately, I don't think the NFL in its current form is something that is ethically like sustainable. I mean, you just look at the head injuries, even with the new technology, even with like the changes to the kickoff rules and stuff like that, is you can't, when two people hit each other, you can't cushion the inside of someone's skull, and so you'll never be able to stop concussions, and you're essentially causing brain damage to the people playing the game. And the problem is that NFL players are compensated for that brain damage, right? Like it's hopefully it's enough, because a lot of guys are going to be facing those issues when they get older, but 99% of the kids who play football in high school aren't ever going to go on to college. 99% of the kids who play football in college aren't going to go on to the NFL. So we're causing brain damage to teenagers as our feeder system, to make the NFL a thing. So, I'm heartened by the NFL moving to more of a flag football model. I think that would be a good step forward in terms of the high school system. But yeah, in terms of the league itself, it's tough to watch, like knowing what I know, and like, just knowing how guys turn out after they're done playing. Although I do have a soft spot in my heart for Vikings fans, because I know we always let your hearts down, in a wide variety of entertaining ways. And I really would like to see them win a Super Bowl at least once, just for all the fans out there.
Well, we saw what happened to you. We saw what happened to Colin Kaepernick. In your mind, has the NFL kind of put an end to resistance?
Yeah, well, they're certainly trying to. I mean, I don't know if you saw, but apparently we solved racism, because we no longer need...
They put it in the end zone and it was gone. It was magical how that happened. They put in racism, they took it out. I was like, oh, snap, it's over. What do you know?
Hang the mission accomplished banner.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, I think unfortunately like I said earlier, like I've been saying, the NFL is run by rich old white men, and they think the prevailing political winds are ones where anything they view as diverse or equity or integration, or like anything that's going to respect progressivism, is not going to be allowed. And so they're capitulating in advance, because they don't want Trump to send his people after them, which again, I think is really cowardly, especially from a league that the majority of its employees are Black men. Like that's a real kind of like, okay, we're getting back to the plantation mentality of, yeah, you can sweat and kill yourself for us, but we don't really care about you as people.
All right, Chris, I'm going to end this podcast by asking you what I call the messy question. This is where we make headlines. I'm sure we made a lot already, but this is where we make headlines and, sort of piss people off. I'm putting it all on your shoulders here, Chris. Who is the best punter in NFL history?
Best punter in NFL history. God. So is
it Ray Guy? Is it Reggie Roby? Is it Sammy Bond? Like, who is it? Give us your hot take about the best punter ever.
Right. So that's actually a really difficult question to answer, because it depends on what you determine as best, right? Is it who kicked it the farthest, who had the highest hang time, who was best at pinning people inside the 20? Like I think Ray Guy, Reggie Roby, definitely. I think Reggie Roby should be in the Hall of Fame. And then there's one other person that I think should be in the Hall of Fame, and he'll never get the attention he deserves, and that's Darren Bennett, because Darren Bennett introduced the Aussie rules kick to the NFL, and every punter now uses the Aussie rules kick for plus 50 situations. And the Hall of Fame is about people who changed the game at their position, right? Like these are the people who legitimately changed the game. Darren Bennett legitimately changed the game of football. Like, and yeah, I know it's punting. Like, yeah, I know most people don't care about punting, but like when you go back, like before Darren Bennett, everyone learned the coffin corner punt because that's all that we knew how to do. Like I used the coffin corner punt because that's all we knew how to do. And then when he introduced the Aussie rules punt, it's like, oh, hold up. This is just a better kick from every aspect. It's easier to use. You're less likely to put it in the end zone. You're less likely to shank it. And it changed that specific part of punting. So I don't think, and Bennett's numbers were also good. Like he was an all-decade player for the Chargers. Like this was after, I think it was like a 12-year Aussie rules football career. So the dude was already beat up, when he came over. So yeah, I would like to see Reggie Roby and Darren Bennett in the Hall of Fame. I think in terms of best punter overall, like again, it depends on era, depends on what you're looking for. And
who's the best punter maybe you saw when you were still
Thomas
in the league?
Thomas Morstead. So normally when you're punting, you have three things that you're trying to do. You're trying to get distance, you're trying to get hang time, you're trying to get location. Generally, you're going to have to settle for two of those things. So if you're going for distance and hang time, you're really laying into the ball. You're not really sure where it's going to go, right? If you're going for distance and location, you're driving it. It's going to be more of a line drive. You're going to lose hang time. If you're going for hang time and location, well, now you're sacrificing distance because, you're making sure that it goes there. Morstead could do all three. Like, and he was phenomenal at it. Like he was excellent when I was playing. Like he was the kind of guy where I'm just like, God damn it. Like I'm trying to do that. And like most of the time I'm succeeding in doing it, but like he just does it better than me. Like, I want to be better than Thomas Morstead.
Really the final question. Give me, because now you probably look at when you played and you see about how they're doing kickoffs now and everything. You're like, wow, that's different. And like, right. But give me your best or most memorable, on a punt return, you got your shit rock story.
Oh, I got two of them.
Oh, I love it. Give me a good one.
They are fantastic. So the first one was my second year in the league. That was so lucky me. My second year in the league was Devin Hester's rookie year, and he went to the Chicago Bears. So I get to face him twice a year. And so we're playing in Chicago, and just a brutally cold day. Like I think it was like 5 degrees on the field, and with wind chill, it was like -2 or -3 or something. And as a dumbass young NFL player, I was like, I'm not going to wear sleeves. I'm going to tough it out. And then it's like I've made a terrible mistake. So anyways, like he'd already, I think, returned one for a touchdown in this game, and so I hit one. It was actually a decent punt. Like I hit it. I hit it to the right. Everyone's running down. He starts coming to our left. So, everyone's tracking. Then he cuts back to go back to the right. So I turn right to start tracking. And Brendan Iamalejo, like he was special teams ace for the Bears for a long time, linebacker, also UCLA guy. He had taken like a 15-yard run up from the side. And he cleaned my clock right as I turned to the side. Like I had just enough time to get my hands up like that. And I thought I had broken my wrist. It's like he jammed them both back into my chest. And so when we're watching film on Monday, it was one of those just like, ooh, because you see him just lining it up. And it's like, oh man, that one I was just miserable. And then the second one we were playing in Jacksonville. So this was, God, I forget when this was. It might have been like 2009, 2008, 2009. So we call directional punt right. I hit the ball directional punt right. Everyone runs to the left. I'm not sure why. So I've got the returner streaking down the sideline. I'm coming from the side to try to get to him. And then the wing, or the outside, the one who had rushed our wing had peeled back to come this way. So like returner coming like this, I'm coming across, blockers coming up towards me. I'm right about to make the tackle, and he sticks his shoulder pad right in my sternum. I go flying like 3 yards in the air, and then I'm kind of like stuck on the ground because I can't breathe. Like literally knocked the wind out of me. So like this is like I'm posing for pay me like one of your French girls, right?
It was like you were buffering on the field.
Yeah, like I was stuck. And then to make matters worse, one of the Jacksonville's players, the dude wasn't even dressed out. Like he was in the warm-ups. Like he wasn't dressed out for the game. He comes over and does the Friday routine. You got knocked the fuck out. And I'm just like.
Meanwhile, you're like, guys, I can't breathe over here. My spleen is like 10 yards away. Okay.
And then at the time, our special teams coach, I think it was Paul Ferraro, he's panicking on the sideline. Longwell told me this later. So Ryan Longwell, our kicker, he's coming up to Longwell. He's like, Longwell, you got to get ready. They just killed Kluwe.
Wow, they're like time of death.
Right? So thankfully, like I was fine. You know, I just needed to get my win back in me and like finish the rest of the game. Had a really good game because now I was like extra motivated to be like, fuck you. Like, I'm gonna kick it even harder. But yeah, those are my I got rocked stories.
Oh man, so that spirit of resistance there even then.
Yep.
Well, Chris, I want to thank you so much for joining me and for taking the time out, and appreciate you sharing your journey and your story. And for a lot of people out there, again, who are trying to figure out what resistance looks like for them, I guess thank you for providing them with a model of what it can look like, especially at the local level, where probably a lot of us need to be more engaged in our communities and understand how the national political movement is infiltrating what we're seeing in our neighborhoods and in our backyard. So thank you, and keep up the good fight.